In case you don't know who I am, I had a sticker on, but my coat wouldn't take the sticker. My name is Mary Ann Savakinis. I'm the Executive Director of the Lackawanna Historical Society, and it is my privilege to welcome everyone here today to share our very exciting news. And welcome to the room that I have affectionately been calling our Indiana Jones room. So I'm truly honored to be here today to announce this major initiative for the Lackawanna Historical Society. Last year, when we first heard word of the sale of the Scranton Times, many of our partners and friends reached out to us to ask if we knew what was going to happen to the newspaper's archives. At first, we weren't sure, but then Times editor Joe Buckowitz, who I hope is standing behind me, called and asked us if we would be interested in taking the archive into our collection. How could we say no? Of course, we could not refuse, but at the same time, how can we manage such a monumental task? My immediate response was to contact Doug Fink, who's also standing behind me, who had previously allowed the Historical Society to store some other larger collections in his space. I asked if he could help us out, and he did not hesitate. In fact, he replied, and I quote, "It would be criminal to lose this treasure trove." With his assurance, we next reached out to our friends at the Scranton Public Library, and we recruited their involvement to start the planning. In the meantime, Joe Buckowitz continued to advocate on our behalf, and his efforts paid off when on November 22nd, we received word from Joe that the donation of the archive was approved, as long as we could remove the items from the building by the end of February. So the Society's staff, which we call small but mighty, there's 3 of us, went to work, and we contacted Scott Thomas, the CEO of the Scranton Public Library, told him the donation was approved, and agreed that the Lackawanna Historical Society would take the lead as the official recipient of the archive. Scott, can you offer a little bit about the library's involvement?
Yeah, it's a concern, what happens to our history. And there's this, our TV station in Scranton, WDAU, some of you might remember it, was locally owned. And when it was sold, there's a story about them throwing the reels and reels of footage in a dumpster. And there's this gentleman named Jack Scannella who worked for them, and he stopped. I have this image of him standing in front of the dumpster with this look of grim determination. That was not necessary here because everyone understood the need to preserve our history here. And so that's why this is here in the library and the Historical Society. It's a community effort to make sure our history doesn't go away. So we were happy to work with Mary Ann and the Historical Society and we put a lot of staff time and helped them out actually doing the physical work too. So we're very happy to be a part of this, and we're so happy that it's found a home here. So yeah, grateful.
Thank you, Scott. What Scott did not mention, not only the volunteers that helped us, and Scott helped us with the planning, we're going to continue to work as we move forward. Scott also helped us immediately secure funding through the Hawk Family Foundation, and Maggie Hawk is behind us today. They were the first folks up who said, yes, you're gonna need some money to make this happen, and they donate it without hesitation. That money was then added to through the Scranton Area Community Foundation. Kathy Fitzpatrick is behind me. They assisted us in obtaining funds through the foundation's critical needs grant, and this, of course, is a critical need. And then additional funding was received through the Briggs Foundation, the Margaret Briggs Foundation, which is managed by the All-in-One Foundations, and John Cosgrove is with us today. So we're very grateful to these 3 organizations that, like Doug Fink, like the Albright Library, stepped up and said this is an important thing for our entire community and supported us. So as we move forward with our planning, the next step was, how do we move some 1,300 boxes in 2 months' time? And we contacted one of our favorite moving companies, Patrick Cadden. And Pat, are you here? Pat Cadden. come on up when you get a chance. Pat Cadden met with us, toured the building, toured this building, and he was so confident. And it was great to know somebody who knows how to do this. We know how to put things on shelves and make them available to the community, but we don't know how to pack them up and move them. Pat Cadden and Cadden Brothers were instrumental in making that happen and are still helping us as we get through the rest. Okay, so I said we had to pack the boxes and move the boxes, and we had to get it done in 2 months' time. Small but mighty staff. The mightiest of our staff right now is Sarah Piccini, our assistant director. Sarah implemented the move, organized the packing, worked with the volunteers. Today she has a cold, which she got yesterday when she finally announced the move is complete. So I'm going to ask Sarah to come up and say a few words about the process.
Thanks, Marianne. I found an analogy recently. The Pennsylvania State Archives recently completed a move of their collection from their building to a new building across town in Harrisburg, and somehow they were able to figure out that it was the equivalent of moving a 3-bedroom house 78 times. I don't know how they got that math. This wasn't quite as much, but it certainly felt like it. Initially, we started this project back in the beginning of January. I worked with Martina Soden, who's the director of the reference department at the Albright Library. We met with Brian Fulton, who was the past librarian at the Times, who helped us get a handle on what was there. This collection was sprawled through 3 floors of the building. If you've ever been in that building, it's a lot like being in Narnia. We kept opening cabinets and saying, "Oh, look, there's more. Great. Awesome." So what's here, what's in these boxes and in the cubbies along the side is about 2/3 of the collection. There is still more there. Pat, I'm gonna need you again to do the rest of the heavy lifting to move the last batch over. We started working to pack all of the boxes and try and keep things in order. We relied on volunteers in the library. I said Martina Soden, Christina Thomas, Tricia Cruz, Michelle Legate, Justine Yeager, who's here today, Kate O'Connor and Mary Schimmelfinnig, and also LHS volunteers, Marlene Cloutier, Abby Petrosky, Juliana Piccini, Lenny Piasky, Christine Zeich, Tom Cipriano, Olivia, Owen, Evan, Tony, and Gwen Bernardi, who were there with me on Sunday at the Times. Even my dad, Ed, got involved to build me a light to use in the wonky dark corners there. And I also have to thank Kathy Weaver and John Romanoskis from the Times building. John especially helped us get rid of the mountains of recycling that we generated in the packing. But what's here is about 2/3 of the collection. Excuse me. It includes mostly photographs, print photos, negatives, there's CDs, there's glass plates, there's discs, there's floppy disks, there's CDs, there's printer's plates. There is newspaper clippings and obituaries based on by subject and by topic heading. And there's also a number of 3D objects and books as well. Books including reference materials like city directories, maps, and the kind of centennial and anniversary editions usually published by churches or by local communities. There's a number of books that we've taken in as well. A little bit of background for what's here. The Scranton Times itself was established in 1869, purchased by E.J. Lina in 1895. The Scranton Tribune dates to 1891. Back in 2005, the two papers combined. They were kind of the last men standing in Scranton. At the turn of the century, there were nearly 20 newspapers in Scranton. The Times and the Tribune were the last men standing. The Times was published in the afternoon, the Tribune in the morning. Both papers combined, I said, in 2005. Most of what's here dates to about the 1940s. There's a handful of earlier materials that we found. Photos of the wholesale block in Scranton on Lackawanna Avenue, photos and materials relating to the construction of the Times building on Penn Avenue in the 1920s. So there are some earlier stuff, but most of what's here dates to about the 1940s to the present. We're excited about it. It brings the Historical Society's collection to the present. The Society existed since 1886. We have a lot on Scranton in the 1890s or so. We don't have much of what everybody remembers as the good old days in Scranton. When you went shopping at the Globe store, it remembers that downtown Christmas thing that everybody always remembers. We have those pictures now, so that was exciting to find some of that stuff. We do have some of the examples along the wall here that you could get an idea of some of what's here. Unfortunately, I would love to be able to take a request and say, hey, do you have this picture from this date? And I will just pull out a box and say, here you go. Yeah, that's not going to be a thing that's going to be quite as easy. That'll be the next phase of the project to make this accessible. I'll turn it back over to Marianne, who's going to talk about how probably I'm going to end up doing that. So that'll be the next part of this project.
As I said, the mightiest member of our staff, Sarah, has really taken this, and yes, I am so grateful to everything she did. She really makes us look good, so that's great. Before I move on to the next steps, I do want to ask the owner of this building to say just a few words, because where we came and what we did to his space, if you can imagine, there was nothing in here when we first showed up. So it was great that there was some space here, but I know Doug wants to talk a little bit about that. And Doug, if you can also mention your staff, because Bob, you're in my cell phone as Bob from Pen Paper, but you are one of my favorite humans. So Doug, please say a few words.
So I won't take long, but I do want to thank Bob Shalinski for his assistance. Bob, you back there? How are you? So Marianne, you invoked Indiana Jones. And since you did, I guess I'll bring it all together by telling everyone that all of us are taking a quote from the movie, passing through history, but this is history. And to not preserve it, again, would be criminal. So it's wonderful that my family, who came to Lackawanna County in the very, very first few years of the 20th century, and Pennsylvania Paper is 102 years old, coming up on. It's very nice that we're able to give back to the community that has done so much for us and help to preserve it and store it. The plans are to digitize it, which is going to take at least 2 or 3 years. But I appreciate everybody coming out and recognizing the fact that we were able to pull this off and do this. And happy to play a small part in making it happen. So thank you very much.
He says small part. This is not small. So again, thanks to Doug, thanks to everyone at Pen Paper. Bob, you're my favorite person. And now what we really have to do is talk about what's next. And I'm going to ask Michael to just come up with me for a minute as we talk. But obviously, our work is cut out for us. Our next steps will be to inventory the collection and determine how best to make it accessible. This will not happen quickly. Sarah just said she'd love to be able to pull that file. That's not an easy thing to do right now. So it won't happen quickly. We have to figure out the best information and how to assess it and get a full picture of what's there, what should be digitized, what finding aids need to be created, and what preservation methods we'll need to take. And perhaps the most important question, where will this permanently be housed? It's massive, and that is my highest priority. We can't stop giving little history lessons. So Sarah mentioned that the Lackawanna Historical Society was founded in 1886. For our first 56 years, we existed without a headquarters of our own, relying on borrowed space from partners. Sounds familiar. Partners like the Scranton Public Library and the Everhart Museum, the city of Scranton, the county of Lackawanna. At one time, we had some of our materials stashed away in their buildings. In 1942, we finally established our permanent home thanks to the generous bequest of a local resident, George Catlin. And while the headquarters at the Catlin House has served us well, we have found that after 82 years, we have grown beyond those walls. I had said to someone earlier, this might just have doubled our size, just this collection alone. And it's not just this collection. We are currently storing other collections off-site with friends like Doug Fink, including the Scranton Lace Records, the Dunmore Historical Society collection. Dunmore Historical Society closed a few years ago. We inherited everything they had. The Guy Cali photograph collections, they're stored in this building right now. And one of our volunteers, Marlene, who's here, she has been creating a database for that so that they can be made accessible. So we are constantly relying on the generosity of people in our community to loan us space, but we can't keep taking loaned space. We have to meet the challenge head on and grow into our own as additional space. As we process this incredible collection, we'll be looking to establish a new space that will not only accommodate this history treasure, but also respond to the community's growing and continuing need to document, preserve, and interpret local history. Sarah mentioned the Historical Society has kind of a good handle on that early period of our history. This collection has helped taking us into the 20th and 21st century, but we've got to prepare for the next centuries, what's going to happen next. So we're currently, the Lackawanna Historical Society, supported by membership. We have more than 800 members at the Historical Society. There are more than 200,000 people living in Lackawanna County. So we want to invite everyone who lives in Lackawanna County to consider supporting our work. Individuals are welcome to join the Historical Society. They can be more informed about our work, and they can support our mission to inspire the exploration of Lackawanna County's history. And you can find membership information on our website using the Members tab, and you can simply donate on our homepage. We will be looking more formally to raise money for our future steps, but anybody can start now to support this important project and our important work. Michael, would you like to say a few words in closing?
I'm going to be very brief, but I would be remiss if I didn't tell you how, as president of the Board of Trustees at the Historical Society, how proud we are of our 3-member staff. They are an incredible triumvirate of workers who always get the job done. I want to thank everybody for being with us this morning in cold storage, as it were. But I want to recognize and thank the people who've contributed so far, their time, their energy, their contributions to get the materials and the collection of archival materials here, where they will be preserved and cared for. And we will look into the next steps. We will be reaching out to the community for support, and hopefully we'll get the job done in a speedy but hard-fought effort. It's a big task, but thank you very much.
We are welcome to take questions, or if you just want to do one-on-one interviews, it's certainly up to you. But if anybody has a question, as we're still a formal group, I'm happy to take any questions. Wonderful. Okay. Please enjoy, please browse, please stay warm. Chris Kelly, I didn't see you, Chris. Yes. 149 Penn Ave would be phenomenal. I'm waiting for that phone call. So talk to people you know, tell them we need space. But if that happened, I really wished it happened back in January. We kind of hoped it would have been, the last minute phone call, but yeah, we do need space. Thank you. Yes.
Have you found anything in the archives that you weren't expecting or you didn't know about the city yet, or have you not looked through them
I mean, we haven't really had a chance to dig into it that much to look. There was so much and we had so little time, we couldn't really look. The things that I've pulled out were things that were loose that I was just kind of sorting into folders. But there's just, I mentioned the 1950s and 60s downtown idea. There's piles of photos of like Christmas shopping in the 1950s. One of my favorite photos I have there are the 1939 marbles champions that are, I think, the original Little Rascals. And there's just a great sense of what the city was like and what the community was like that we're finding, even just looking very quickly. The newspaper clippings, we found at least 3 boxes of all murders, so there are murder boxes. There's an awful lot of really great stories that we haven't really had a chance to dig into. We have a general sense of them, but there's a really tremendous archive of stuff here.
Can you talk about how this kind of, does this change the Historical Society going forward? Do you feel like inheriting this archives kind of gives you more insight into the community over the past, 100 or so years?
Yeah, I think it does. It also, I said it brings it forward a lot. We have a lot of the older stuff now. This is the newer history that we don't really cover so much in the collection that we have. And it's the everyday stories. It's the little stories too, rather than just big stuff. There's files on floods and fires. But then I said there's boxes and boxes of just obituaries. People who are only in the newspaper once or twice in their lives when they're born or when they die. we have those records now too. So we could tell more of the small stories rather than just the big names that you see on street signs and on buildings. Anything to add to that?
The idea of what it's changed at the Historical Society as an organization. And I have been here for 30 years, and we often say, Ella Rayburn is here, she's our collections manager and our trustee, we're running out of room, we're running out of room. Well, guess what? We have run out of room. So like now, it's so viable that we have been saying we need more space for so long, and now there's no denying it. And so it's an optimistic problem to have because we are growing, we're telling more stories, and we can go to the community and say, help us, because we want to continue to do our mission. Anything else? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.